Welcome to a special family edition of Biscuits and Jam from Southern Living. I'm Sid Evans, editor-in-chief of Southern Living magazine. In all of our families, there are recipes that become tradition. And over the years, that tradition becomes synonymous with love and memory. So here at Biscuits and Jam, we've gone through our favorite episodes and picked out a few clips, some of which you haven't heard yet, where our guests share their own stories of what family means to them. To kick things off, here's the Empress of Soul, Gladys Knight, talking about how there was always music in her kitchen. Is it fair to say that you love to cook?
I love to cook. I've been cooking, since I was 6 years old.
Wow, you got an early start.
I did. I come from a family where all the ladies in my family used to come together, and they'd just be having so much fun in the kitchen, and one of them would make this particular recipe, and somebody else would be doing something else, and they'd just, it'd be so good too. Smelling up the whole house is great. And so that's when I started, and I was always in there in the way at 6 years old. But they started, rather than chastising me, they started teaching me. And I love that. I was just fascinated. And when it was done and they called everybody in to eat, the food was amazing. And it just kept me going. And when I got 8, my mom bought me a cookbook. They had a children's cookbook. And I was so excited, so I started cooking out of that cookbook. Very simple things like eggs or making a special toast or making a little soup or whatever, something very plain. And that's how I started cooking. And I was so amazed by these ladies in my family, and they just taught us how to cook.
So there were a lot more than just your mom cooking. Did you have aunts and uncles, cousins?
All of them. Let me tell you something that people don't pick up on these days. Men are great cooks. All my uncles and my cousins, my male cousins and nephews, they came to cook too. And on top of that, we'd all be singing. We had enough people in there cooking to have a choir. And all the time, I can remember that after we ate, we sang. And I could hear my mom and my aunties and stuff in the kitchen because their kitchen overlooked the driveway where we would play. It was just really a backyard with cement, They would have the kitchen window up and we could hear them singing. All my folks could sing. My mom, my aunties, my uncles, and my cousins. It was like that.
Chidi Kumar, a chef in North Carolina who was a James Beard Award finalist this year, also learned a love of cooking from her mother. But as she explained to me, it went beyond just creating a meal. It was also the way she and her mother could truly communicate.
My mom had also a very fractured childhood, much more traumatic than mine. She was a child in what is now Pakistan, and her family is Hindu. So they were basically forced to leave. And so she lost her parents and her brother in that migration. A couple of million people died, actually, in the space of about a year in that transfer.
This is during the partition.
This is the partition, 1947. So the thing that she held on to also was food memories. And I think that was like the language that she had to connect to her mother and to her childhood. And those times were all wrapped around the village square or the town square had a grain mill and, a tandoor oven, and the aunties that would teach her certain things and the Muslim aunties that would teach her other things. And so the food ritual was so much of a part of what she recalled of her childhood. So I think that when she had kids, and I'm not, if she was maybe born now, I'm not sure if she would have chosen to have children. I think that was a really hard thing for her to do. I think the thing that she knew how to impart was food memory and food culture. When we moved to the U.S., I think she wasn't really trying to keep us isolated in this Indian bubble. She knew that her young kids were going to become American. She never said, you can't listen to Western music and, you can't dress like this or whatever. But the food part was the thing that I think she chose, was this sort of innocuous ambassador of our culture into our soul. And she did that knowingly and unknowingly. I think a part of it was just she knew how important it was as a scientist to be have good nutrition and not eat junk food and not eat frozen food and all that stuff. But it was also this we're not going to put up a battle or a fight if the food is delicious. And even though there were times when we were like, can we just please have spaghetti and pizza like normal people? And we did do that sometimes, but she would have to make it in her own way. So, but it was this language. And I think that, it provided a time to meditate and connect with her own mother, and then pass that memory unspoken on, because there was so much trauma in it, that I think it was a cloak of passage, I guess, that was seemingly very innocuous and gentle and flavorful, but still really patient and deliberate. She was going through, I think, what is probably PTSD of being displaced again. She was severely depressed, and it was like a way of me kind of reaching her. She made something that she loves to make, and I loved to eat. So it was this connection that I could have with her.
The way our favorite recipes are made step by step can be as much of a family tradition as the meals themselves. So on our very first episode of Biscuits and Jam, it was great to hear country singer Jake Owen describe how his own family's recipes will continue to live on for generations. He also shared with me a touching story about bringing his dad on the golfing trip of a lifetime.
Our family is really large. We have a large family, but we were just all on Zoom the other night like this. There was 40 of us. And I was hosting a game show for everyone, and I was doing all the sounds and everything. I had everything configured to where when I started the game show, I had the like music and dings and buzzers. And anyways, we had everybody on there, and it goes to show you how much we all miss each other. And I think that is a Southern trend of families being together, right? My cousin Carrie put together for Christmas a few years ago. She called around to everybody in the family. And then she got my grandmother to give not only her recipes, but all of her mother's recipes. And my cousin made everyone for Christmas an Owen family cookbook with everyone's classic recipes. And so I have that. So if you guys are interested in any special, unique Owen family recipe, we don't give those out a lot, but I keep Southern living in high regard. So I'll sneak you guys a famous Owen recipe. What I do find interesting, too, that I think is a great quick story is that because my dad was interested in golf, and he should have played professionally, really, he's that great. He wanted that for me so bad. I think my dad wanted to one day just walk the fairways of Augusta National with me while I played in the Masters or whatever, because that was going to be our only way there, to Augusta National. And fast forward, 10 years after I moved to Nashville, I played a radio show for the kind people of Augusta. The guy there told me, he's like, "Hey, Jake, I know you're a big golfer." He said, "I promise you one day I'm going to get you on Augusta National." And I said, "No way." I said, "Well, listen, if that ever happens, the only way that I'll play is with my dad." And he goes, "All right, well, if I can make that happen, I'll let you know." So it was 2013 or 14. I get a call. It was December 22nd. And my buddy said, "Hey, go ahead and get your bags packed and meet me tomorrow over here in Augusta, because we're going to play around a golf in Augusta. You think you can get your dad up here?" And so I called my dad. He answered the phone, and I said, "Dad, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just up here at work. You know what I'm doing." I said, "Well, you need to go ahead and head home and pack your bags and get your golf clubs, because we're playing Augusta National tomorrow." And he's like, "You're kidding me." And I said, "Nope." And so he went home, packed his bags, got on a plane, flew to Atlanta, drove up and met me in Augusta the next day. And the two of us played Augusta National together. And I watched my dad tear up walking down the first fairway. And, man, it's it's kind of wild to think about that, because the one thing, which was golf, that you would have thought would have brought my dad and I together to Augusta is not at all what happened. The one thing that my dad could have never taught me how to do, that I chased because I believed in it, which was music, is what brought my dad and I to Augusta. And I can't tell that story enough, because I think it's really important for kids out there to know that always respect your parents, always listen to them and what they say, but have a confidence to what you believe in as a kid too, because if you have a dream, like, anything is possible, not just fulfilling your dreams, but man, quite frankly, I fulfilled my dad's dream of playing Augusta National by chasing a dream that I wanted to fulfill. And I think sometimes people don't realize that you can fulfill a lot of people's dreams outside of your own by just being confident and chasing something you believe in.
Moving now from the fairway to the stage, Brett Eldredge spoke with me about which family member is still with him in spirit at every one of his concerts, even though he passed away years ago. And later, Brett reveals how his grandmother's battle with Alzheimer's inspired one of his biggest hits. So Brett, were you close with your grandfather?
Very, very close. He was, I would say he was my best friend. He lived a full life. He lived till I think he was 85, and you know, growing up, he had a DX station, so he had a gas station, and my dad and all my uncles worked at the gas station and with him, and you know, the old school, go out to the pump, and you have a attendant, which happened to be him or my dad or my uncles, and when they were in high school and throughout their life as kids, would fill up the cars, and it was his name was Shirley, and which was very unique in itself. It was kind of like a boy named Sue, you know. And he just had all these amazing stories. He was a big-time life storyteller, and I always thought he was embellishing on everything, and it was all made up and sometimes. And then I would check with some old friend of his or whatnot, and they would always back it up. He was always had these just amazing life stories. He went to war. He did all these, you know, crazy things in his life, and he had just amazing ways to share that with his family, and that always really left a mark on me, and it made me, I think, have a big imagination as a songwriter and as a storyteller, and I think that's kind of where I got my craft from as a songwriter and even as a singer, is telling these stories that he was telling.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. That's great. You got to spend so much time with him.
Yeah, it was. I still, to this day, you know, as I have him on the cover of my album, I mean, he definitely, like on one of my in-ear monitors that you wear inside your ears, like headphones before I go on stage, I've got his autograph or his signature engraved into my in-ear monitors for my stage. So every night he's on stage with me. It's pretty cool.
Brett, you had a song called Raymond about a guy who works in a nursing home with a patient who has Alzheimer's. Can you talk to me a little bit about where that song came from? That seemed to be kind of a big moment for you.
That was my first single, Raymond was, and it was a song I wrote with a guy named Brad Chrysler here in Nashville. I think it was the first time we ever wrote, actually, and I just was kind of a shy guy a little bit, but I stepped in the room and I was really emotional about my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. At the time, she was really starting to struggle with it, starting to forget people in the family, and really just in a tough place, and watching my family go through that and watching her go through that, and somebody that knew me or everything about me her whole life, never missed a birthday call, never, you know, she was everything to me, and I was just tore me up, and I started to tell Brad about this, and he's like, well, I sang hymns in nursing homes growing up, and I said, well, that's what I did too, and I used to bring a little boombox thing in nursing homes and sing them hymns or old big band songs or whatever it was. I would go in there and sing. And so we started telling this story about a guy that works in a nursing home, and I worked down at Asbury Hills, minimum wage, but it pays the bills, cleaning floors and leading hymns on Sunday. And so that was the opening line, and rang very true to my story in ways. And I wanted to find a way to kind of tell the story and make people relate to the fact that, yeah, somebody's going through this tough time, and it's really hard to see your family members go through it. And instead of, correcting them and saying, I'm not your son, Raymond. I'm some guy that just works at this nursing home. Instead of saying that, you play the part that you are Raymond, and you just go with it. And you don't need to correct them, and because they can't help it. And so I think it was just a very good way to help me cope with it. And I learned quickly that how many people were going through this similar thing to me, how many their families were, and I think it was a really powerful thing to get out there at that moment to get me introduced to the world.
Could I beg you to just sing a little bit of it, just the first part?
I work down at Asbury Hills, minimum wage, but it pays the bills, cleaning floors and leading hymns on Sunday. Catherine Davis, room 303, the sweetest soul you ever could meet. I bring her morning coffee every day. She calls me Raymond. She thinks I'm her son.
Stay tuned for more Biscuits and Jam. After the break, we'll hear from Kimberly Schlapman, Ann Womack, John Hyatt, and Scott Avett. Welcome back to Biscuits and Jam from Southern Living. One topic we've hit on with a lot of our guests is how cooking is a language of love. Kimberly Schlapman of the country quartet Little Big Town told me how much the women in her life going back 3 generations played a part in her own kitchen inspirations, and how that same love is now being passed down to her children.
All the women in my family were cooks, both of my grandmothers. I lived right next door to one of my grandmothers, and then just 5 minutes away from the other grandmother. And then for a while, I had both of my great-grandmothers who were also incredible cooks. One of my great-grandmothers made 40 biscuits every day because she had 8 kids, and they worked out in the fields. And so every morning, she made 40 biscuits for those for those hardworking kiddos. So I'm from a legacy of women who took care of their families by cooking for them, and they loved on their families. And that's what my mama taught me, that you love on people. One way to love on people is by cooking for them. And so both of my great-grandmothers, my grandmothers, and my mama, I have recipes from all of them. And I'm not a trained chef. And especially when I'm talking to you at Southern Living, I have to make that clear. I was never trained. I just grew up watching those amazing women in my family take care of the people they love. And I learned a whole lot from them.
So you recently posted a picture of your daughter and I think your mom making tea cakes together. And I noticed that you guys were wearing aprons that belong to your grandmother.
Yes.
Tell me why that connection is so important to you.
My grandmothers always wore aprons. That was just something, I wish we still did that. And sometimes I'll pull out my aprons at home for practicality if I'm frying, something I don't want to get on my shirt. But also for nostalgia, I can close my eyes and see my grandmothers at the stove in their aprons. And so when my mama decided she was going to teach Daisy how to make tea cakes, she often wears an apron too, so it's not out of the ordinary for her. But she pulled out 2, one for her and one for Daisy, and they each had belonged to her mother. And tea cakes in our family, when you say tea cake, you can also substitute the word love because it's equal. Mama's tea cakes are pure love. And so when she grabbed those aprons and she stood at the counter and put Daisy's on her, tears flooded my eyes because that is so much more than just making a cookie. So much more. It's a family tradition. It's a memory for me and Daisy. And it's just a way for my mother to love on her grandchild by passing that knowledge along. And that picture, I'm going to frame it and put it in my house because it is one of my greatest worldly treasures.
Speaking of mothers, Ann Womack had some great anecdotes about how her 80-year-old mother has become an entrepreneur during the pandemic, and how personal gestures and sharing recipes make all the difference.
Her pound cake is really famous around here. In fact, the neighbor saw me out on the street the other day and said, "Hey, can I get your mom's pound cake recipe?" And I said, "Yeah." I still haven't taken it to her, but I got to run that over there. But that's famous around here.
Do you have it on one of those old recipe cards?
Oh yeah, definitely. So funny you say that, because when I asked my mom, I said, the neighbor wants your pound cake recipe. And I thought she would just hand me a printout because people are always asking for it. And she went inside and wrote it all down on the cutest little card. She is so cute. My mom is so cute. But she did. She wrote it. She's 80 years old. She wrote it out by hand because it's sort of like a little gift,
Yeah, it means more that way, doesn't it?
I guess so. It did. Yeah. I didn't think about it until she handed it to me. And yeah, it does. And she's a great cook, like I said, and she sews a lot. In fact, when this whole thing started, I started a business with her because I told her, I said, you got to stay busy, you got to stay home. So we started a little gift business, and it has been going crazy, and she's been sewing like crazy.
Well, she's been making masks, hasn't she?
Yep, she has. Yeah. She was making tons of masks and taking them to the hospital and to nurses around here. And we have a nurse that lives next door. And so she has a lot of friends, and I think she made about 200 and something masks by herself and delivered those to all these places around here. And there's a hospital around here. And finally, I started making some cute ones with her. I would go out there and sit with her, and she taught me to sew when I was a little girl. So I started making some little cute ones that were different, and one that looks like the Texas flag, and one with Mickey Mouse on it, and all these different things. And I just told her, I said, you got to start putting these, on your Etsy site. And it's just, she's been a little busier, I think, than she wanted to be, but it's really cute. We don't sit around. We're busy people.
I mean, your mom sounds very cool. I don't know a lot of 80-year-old women who have an Etsy site and are starting a new business.
I know, right? She is. She's very cool. Her mother was that way, and we just, I don't know. That's the way we were taught to be.
In recent years, 7-time Grammy nominee John Hiatt has collaborated with his daughter Lily, who has a successful music career of her own. John spoke to me about what that means to him as a father, as well as being the subject of one of her songs. So tell me what it's been like having a very talented daughter, Lily Hiatt, who's making her own way in the music business.
Yeah. Oh, thrilling, exciting. And all three of our kids are just so amazing. And one of them happens to be an amazing singer-songwriter, which blows my mind. And she was secretive about it. She spent her time in her room. I gave her a guitar, I think when she was 12. And we didn't hear from her again until she was 16. And she sang at her high school talent show. She got up and sang Wild Horses and Angel from Montgomery. And you couldn't pick our jaws up off the floor. It was like, what? This is that's what she's been doing up in her room, So yeah, it was quite a revelation.
You recorded a song of Lily's called All Kinds of People. What drew you to that song?
I like the fact that she was going to the grocery, in that verse. She just has a way of putting you in a scene. So now, you can see her songs. It's good. And feel them, see them and feel them.
And you and Lily both seem to write songs that are very personal at times. And she wrote a song about you called Imposter on her album Trinity Lane.
Yes.
Which is a really powerful song. Tell me, when was the first time you heard that, and what kind of impression did it make on you?
She told me about it after she'd recorded it, so I heard her rough. And it came out of a conversation. She was a barista at this little coffee shop. On and off, they had a great relationship where they'd let her go out on the road and then come back and pick it up when she needed the dough. And I was in her coffee shop, and we were talking, and I was 62 at the time, so it was 5 years ago, because I remember telling her, because we were talking about authenticity and what is that, and sometimes we neither feel authentic nor even real, it's like vapor. There's wisps of something. And I say, I felt like an imposter until I was about 62. It took me till I was about 62 to stop feeling like I was faking it. Like people were going to, pull me aside from the stage and go, you know what, it's,
we're on to you.
Yeah, we're on to you. And find another line of work. And so, the first time I heard it, I think I cried. I know I cried. I did cry.
He said, I feel like an imposter. Took me till 62 to realize I'm good at what I do. There are things that I've been hiding from, things that I've been looking for.
It's important to remember, especially in the South, that being part of a family doesn't necessarily have to mean being blood relatives. Sometimes family is who you choose to be with. In our final segment today, Scott Avett of the Avett Brothers speaks to that fact, as well as the meaning of fatherhood. Scott, we've been talking about your family a lot. I want to fast forward a little bit and talk about your music family and kind of your road family. Tell me a little bit about this group of people that you travel with now.
So the beautiful and unique thing about our just about 20-year journey has been that we were never successful enough to grow too fast. And we grew much like the children that we are. We grew slow, and people came along and into our family. Family members joined along the way in real time, naturally, slowly, never in more than like singular additions. It was always plus one, plus one, plus one, because we saw the need and we could identify the person, whether they were the greatest. And this is probably where we navigating this is tricky. We didn't always hire the best. Like, obviously, I'm not the best banjo player in the world, but I'm the banjo player for the Avett Brothers. It was more about the person. It's always been more about the person. And then the person would grow into the role. And I can't say that necessarily about Tanya, Joe, and Mike Marsh, because they're all brilliant musicians. But for Bob, Seth, me, Bonnie, we all have grown into it slowly. And that, I think, is what people have witnessed along the way, is us growing. Like, I don't know if it's getting better. It's just us being on the journey. Now, it goes well beyond the band. We have a whole crew of people that we know and that we love. And they've come along the same way, slowly. And it's been so personal, and it's so intimate. And I can't imagine it being another way. Kind of like I was talking about art school. Like, I can't imagine putting out a record where we didn't somehow make the album cover. Even if someone else makes it, we're working with them, make it like we're making it. For us, we've crafted this family. In a lot of ways, this family has crafted itself, and it's been beautiful, and it's been a harbor of love. Really, it's a place where when people go, it's carefully thought out. And not many people have gone, but when they have, it's been right. And we know that it's right. Nobody's abruptly ever been thrown out. It is just that. It is a family. And really just saying that it's a family and that we love each other is all that needs to be said.
You know, I think it might have been yesterday or the day before, you posted a beautiful song on Instagram called A Father's First Spring.
Yeah.
And there was a lyric in that song that says, I was a child before the day that I met Eleanor, which is your daughter's name.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, how has being a father changed you as an artist and a musician?
It's a huge blow to the ego, having a child, witnessing a child being born, witnessing a partner going through that, witnessing a mother birth a child is such a huge blow to another's ego. And that's a good thing. It's really hard not to only think about yourself, but having children does a damn good job at interrupting that. And I'm grateful for that. That's because I know that that's really the goal. Because I'm leaving this ego. I know that I'm leaving it behind when I pass away. And the more that I can keep my eyes on it and keep it in check, I think the better I am to other people. And being good to other people is what being a dad is about. Being good to my brood over here, like that. I got to start there. I always think about wanting to change the world, and I'm like, then I'm being grumpy or something with my family, and I'm going, how can you how can you change the world, Scott, if you're not going to treat your family good? So having kids is a good exercise in good advocacy and good example. It's like a given opportunity well, not given, it takes some hard work, but it's such a good opportunity to do that. I love being a dad, and I love watching these kids grow. I think they're going to be great men and women. I think that's exciting.
Thanks for listening to our special family edition of Biscuits and Jam. Southern Living is based in Birmingham, Alabama, and this podcast was produced and edited in Nashville, Tennessee. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or telling your friends about the program. You can find us online at southernliving.com and subscribe to our print publication by searching for Southern Living at www.magazine.store. Biscuits and Jam is produced by Heather Morgan-Schott, Chrissy Tiglius, and me, Sid Evans, for Southern Living. Thanks also to Ann Kane, Jim Hankey, Eliza Lambert, and Rachel King at Pod People. Join me back here next week for a brand new episode of Biscuits and Jam.